Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Today we will discuss about the last part of the exam, which is the psychological test and the interview. Let me be fair. I don't have much of a statistics on it. What really happens in the interviews, but I'll share just my story about the interview. I scored not just very good, I scored outstanding in interview. So there might be good lesson for you in that. Psychological test is a sort of your test of conversation. There are short group discussion, one or two, in which there are five, six, seven candidates, and they give you a topic, and you start discussing among themselves, and they independently evaluate your participation and how you converse. So it's essentially about essential communication. The basics thing about the essential communication is when you start participating in communication, how do you handle your communication? How do you interject? So these are some facets that I'll highlight. For example, how do you advise? So these are some of the sentences you can start your communication with. Likewise, when you are going to suggest something, so how should we try to suggest something? So we should start our sentence with, for example, we could, why don't we, what about? So these are the starting cues or anchors which whereby you can easily flow through the ongoing communication with your friends. But it's essentially an ethics of listening and ethics of saying your part of the communication. In the ongoing discussion, when you have to give your opinions, there is a way you have to give your opinion, or there is a way when you elicit opinions of the others or extend the discussion a little bit further through opinions. And in a discussion, a debate kind of a session, we agree to an argument which proposed by somebody, or we disagree. So in an agreeing and disagreeing, our response should not be sort of an abrupt and angular, no, 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 I don't agree. No, it should be soft, and it should be very ethical. So these are one of a few of the things that I have just put on the screen, which particularly are people coming from the rural areas whose schools were only teaching how to write and how to read. Language development is essentially not part of our curriculum, how to speak and how to talk. So it's for a little bit of a help of them. They can start their discussion. For example, I couldn't agree more to that. Even just saying this sentence is good enough that you started your participation. Likewise, how do you disagree? And there are various ways of disagreeing. You can disagree politely, you can disagree strongly when your converse argument is really strong. So that's how you can go about. Saying yes and no is also about agreeing or disagreeing. Sometimes you have to say no, but you're not very definitely sure that it's a real no. So you can start things like that. Probably not, or I don't think so, I doubt it, or we could think like this. Or so these are just those cues which will help keeping with the discussion. Yeah, the few more, like you want to request someone to repeat, or when you are switching a subject and starting discussing on a new dimension, or you want to a little bit dilate the discussion, or want to check whether they are agree or not, so we're taking their nod on it. So, or when want to interrupt. So these are the things you can utilize. Okay, and now I share my interview story. Essentially, it was five, six questions, and I remember all those questions, which I just recalled and I'm sharing. My subject was geography, so they asked me the question this: we want to travel from Islamabad, Pakistan, to Europe by land. So, what route shall we follow? So, this was essentially a test of my geography, that how far good I understand the map and the atlas. So they give you ample time to react, to make your way through the questions. They don't keep you under pressure that, oh, you do it fast. No, don't do it fast. Think about it and start making your journey. I go from here to there, then to Iran, to which countries come on the way, and so. So for a geography student, in any case, it's important to know about the map and the atlas. Another interesting question that came afterward was, they said, one of the members said, think about this sentence for a minute and then speak for 2 minutes. The sentence was, when the first man drew a line on the ground and said, this land is mine, then the trouble started. So I just heard the sentence and started thinking about it. Honestly, what came to my mind was that this is an actually issue of possession. I don't know what was the correct answer. Neither did they argue with me that it's what I said made sense or not, or they didn't agree or disagree to anything, but they just listened and then switched on to the next question. I took the argument that is essentially when the human being came, everything was sort of communal and the people lived together, and then we started having possession. This is my thing, this is my thing, and on this possession, then our basic issues of greed and all things developed, and sort of that was just an off the cuff thing. So you can understand. I don't know what do they want to assess out of it, but these sort of questions they can always ask. How do we make up our argument and our case for a point? Then they give me a list of about, I think there were 10 or 15 items on that, names of different peoples and places essentially. One of the names that I remember I didn't know about was Elvis Presley. So the rest of them almost I knew about it, and honestly I said, and one or two which I didn't know, I simply honestly said, like, I haven't heard about it. So that's very important. You should be honest. The next interesting question was, are you a Muslim first or a Pakistani first? So I'm telling you my response. My response was, I feel like I'm a Pakistani first. I'm a Muslim first, sorry. So I thought the faith is important, and the association with the land is maybe is also important, but not that important as faith. They disagreed on it. So they rather kind of tend to advise me. They said, "Beta, yeah, this is the thought you should have, that we should think like Pakistanis." For example, then the argument they raised was, what is common between a person living here and a person living in Turkey? So there can be various argument on it, but it's better to listen to and if what they're saying makes more sense, no harm agreeing to that and have your point as well. So this was a interesting question. Who are Asian tigers? This, again, I feel it's a part of political geography or economic geography. This was related to my subject, so an easy question, but a general knowledge question essentially. This was all about my interview, and an interesting thing that I would share, because I scored outstanding in interview. I was last on that day. After the interview, when I came back to the waiting hall of the candidates, I was the last, since so everybody has left. I was alone. One of the interviewers, one of the retired secretary who was part of the interview team, he came over to me and said, "Gentlemen, I'm really impressed by your pronunciation. You're coming from. I've seen your schooling is from rural areas, and but still." I said, "So I told you my hobby is radio listening, and that helped me a lot." And he mentioned two words which I had used in some responding to some question: indict and rapprochement. And he said, "Okay, I'm really impressed that your pronunciation is mm, really wonderful." So I said, I've heard these words on the BBC. Indict, because at that time it was the Bosnia issues and the indictment of the war criminals and those sort of things. And rapprochement, I had read it and heard it actually on the pronunciation instead of reading these words as indict or reproachment. I think this is a one good lesson, that when we are preparing ourselves for communication, better that we be sure how this word is pronounced, because we should know the meaning of the word, the use of the word, as well as how this word is spoken. Language is essentially about speaking, how we utter the word, and that's important. That helped me a lot, as you can appreciate now. BBC English programs, BBC podcast, for example, 6 Minutes English. They have another, the English We Speak, are quite useful. VOA, Voice of America special English programs are really good for learning pronunciation. One basic principle in the interview is that it's mostly in English, but they might ask you a question in your native language or in Urdu. The principle is if they ask questions in Urdu, we have to respond in Urdu. If they ask in Punjabi, we have to respond in Punjabi. But if the question is in English, we have to respond in English. So that's basic ethics and principle. So that's all. I think the bottom line is that questions are not answered. Questions are responded and handled. And listening, ethical listening, is essentially very important component of that. And we should listen very carefully, take a pause, reflect, and then respond. That pause is actually few seconds, but those few seconds are very important. We shouldn't be abrupt. We should let our logical mind catch up because our amygdala responds spontaneously. We should give few seconds for those reasoning mind to catch up and then start responding. And repeating and confirming if we are not sure what is being talked about or what is being discussed, there's no harm about it. Rather, it reassures that you have listened carefully and this is what they want. You can restate, is it what you mean to ask or say. So these are the main lessons. Since a major thing is responding or talking sometimes spontaneously, I think this talk is quite interesting. Stanford has put 1 hour talk, sort of training on think fast, talk smart communication techniques by Matt Abraham, their business, one of the business studies professor. So it's good. I mean, you can benefit from it and listen to something on listening skills on YouTube. So the bottom line is be honest, be yourself. Don't do any name dropping. Don't try to kind of say about anything which you don't know and just you are mentioning such names or words, etc., which you are not really sure about. So that sort of overconfidence actually goes against you. Just be confident, but don't be overconfident. Just be honest, be yourself. I think this is the number one lesson. And number two lesson is brush up your subjects, know about your subjects and know a little bit more about that, because after the exam we tend to kind of put aside the books and etc. And it's part of the pre-psychological and interview that they ask you about, mention 2 or 3 books that you have read, so they are also in front of them and they can start discussion on those books as well which you liked and what was the book about. So you should be honest about it, and rather you should read 2 3 books, because the basic principle is in an interview, that's a small statistics of the personality that comes before you. If the interviewee, the participant, is good and responsible about what he has done or what he has in hand, so we can expect he will be responsible in the next job or task as well. So that's the premise. And I think the final word is the tawakkul. Tawakkul is very important. The basic definition of tawakkul is work hard and pray to Allah. Wastainu bis sabri was salat. Be persistent and keep asking. And good luck. Thank you very much.